Today on UinFO News, sworn testimony offered at last week's Congressional Subcommittee hearing on UAPs by Navy pilots David Fravor and Ryan Graves and whistleblower David Grusch, who revealed the existence of a decades-long UFO cover-up, sent shockwaves around the world. In today's episode of UinFO News, we report on new evidence which appears to validate one of Grusch's claims that U.S. personnel recovered a partially intact vehicle of unknown origin which crashed in northern Italy in 1933, years before the Roswell incident. In other news, whistleblower and former U.S. Marine Michael Herrera has broken his 14-year silence by claiming, while assigned to a humanitarian mission in Indonesia, he and his 6-man unit witnessed a hovering black UFO being loaded with weapons and cargo by unmarked, heavily armed special forces who threatened his unit at gunpoint. This is UinFO News. The age of disclosure is here. This is UinFO News, keeping you informed. Welcome to UinFO News, your source for all the latest UFO and UAP information. I'm your host, Tony Shara. Thanks for being with us. Let's get started. During his NewsNation interview with Ross Coulthart, whistleblower David Grusch made an incredible claim that the U.S., after being tipped off through back channels by Pope Pius XII, took possession of a partially intact UAP vehicle which crashed in Italy shortly before World War II. Dictator Benito Mussolini's government recovered the downed craft in 1933, established a secret research program to study it, and moved the vehicle to a secure Air Force facility. According to Grusch, the Vatican made U.S. authorities aware that the craft existed, and it was eventually captured by the Americans, who transported it back to the United States. Now, Italian researcher Roberto Pinotti has turned over hard evidence which he says proves Grusch's story. According to Pinotti, various documents, including authentic telegrams issued by Mussolini's government to field researchers, official diagrams of the recovered craft, and sketches from the crash scene, were sent to him by an anonymous source who claimed they were inherited from a relative and former member of Mussolini's UFO research program. Questions to the Vatican regarding their involvement with American authorities and the transfer of the recovered craft have gone unanswered. UinFO News continues to follow this fascinating story and will report any developments as they happen. Next, we turn to former U.S. Marine Michael Herrera, who said he encountered a UAP 14 years ago deep within the jungles of Indonesia. Herrera was recently interviewed on The Sean Ryan Show and claimed that while assisting survivors of an earthquake, he and his 6-man expeditionary unit spotted a black octagonal UFO hovering over a clearing, being loaded with weapons and other cargo by unmarked special forces who surrounded Herrera's unit and threatened to kill them. Here's a look at that riveting interview.
Guys, and then all of a sudden glancing over to what was going on behind them. And that's when I started seeing the key details of this thing. Like it had like a scale pattern on it, kind of like an octagonal, because the craft itself was like an octagonal shape where you could see points. Had a pyramid structure on top that was black, and you can see the shadowing of it as it rotated. But they had weapon cases in the back of each truck bed. And, you know, you could store like a couple hundred weapons, maybe 100 weapons, maybe a platoon, a company-size element. And then they had a shipping container thing. I mean, it looked like a shipping container, but smaller and half the size. And the thing that was different about this is I had a cylinder on the front of it that was towards the truck. After I gave my presentation of this, he confirmed, he says, no, he's like, I don't want to leave Michael hanging out there, but I was not expecting to come and talk to you about this. And he went explaining what the operations do, why they do it, and what they were using them for. And he says, there's not drugs that they're putting in these shipping containers. He says it's humans.
Years later, after describing the incident to others who participated in similar operations, Herrera recalled that, in addition to weapons, the craft was loaded with vacuum-sealed containers, the kind used to transport living beings. Herrera soon realized that what he and his men had witnessed may have been a bizarre human trafficking operation involving a U.S.-controlled UAP. On the next episode of UinFO News, we'll cover a recently leaked memo allegedly sent by Canadian Parliament member Larry Maguire to Canada's Defence Minister Anita Anand. Maguire's memo, which appears to be authentic, specifically refers to a program run by Canada's equivalent of the U.S. Department of Defense, confirming Canada's involvement in the recovery of UAPs as far back as the 1950s. You'll also hear about a written statement that investigative journalist George Knapp provided to Congress, which was read into the official record during last week's historic subcommittee hearing on UAPs. Knapp's statement recounts his visit to Russia years ago and discusses classified documents he received from senior Russian military officials. These documents appear to confirm that Russian fighter pilots engaged with UAPs, fired at them, and even describes encounters involving aircraft that had been lost and pilots killed. That does it for this episode of UinFO News. I want to thank you for being here as we cover the latest UFO and UAP developments. Remember to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified of new episodes. And visit us on the web at uinfonews.com, on Twitter, and follow us on social media. I'm Tony Shara, and this is UinFO News, keeping you informed.